the future. Could it actually happen with a real time machine? That's tonight's IDEA, our series on new ideas.
Many people are crazy about the idea of breaking the rules of physics. We all want to believe someone in a garage can change the world. A young engineer named Mike Markham did just that. He built a device that could warp reality, and then one night, he and his machine simply blinked out of existence. The most shocking fact, however, wasn't that he vanished, but what he left behind. The DNA evidence from the scene didn't match anyone in any database. In fact, it didn't match anyone from this world. He didn't just invent a time machine, he became the mystery itself. The man who bent light. Years before the world knew his name, Mike Markham was just a quiet kid from rural Missouri with a strange obsession: sparks. While other kids were playing baseball or riding bikes, Mike was digging through scrapyards. He wasn't looking for toys, he was hunting for old television sets, coils of copper wire, and anything that could hold a charge. To put it mildly, his fascination was intense. He didn't have a fancy lab or a mentor. His entire world was a beat-up toolbox and a burning need to understand the invisible river of electricity that powered everything. His neighbors nicknamed him the Electric Kid after seeing him try to power light bulbs with fence wire and hook car batteries up to doorbells just to see what would happen. He was constantly chasing that brilliant, crackling flash of light. By his early 20s, this hobby had grown into a full-blown quest. In a small, cramped corner of a friend's shed, he built his first serious experiment. A Jacob's ladder. This wasn't some toy science kit. It was a beast. He mounted 2 thin metal rods in a V-shape on a thick wooden board. When he flipped the switch, humming arcs of high-voltage blue plasma would crawl up the rods, cracking like miniature lightning bolts. The thing nobody tells you about these arcs is how unstable they are. To fix this, Mike used a trick he found in an old science magazine, aiming a cheap laser pointer between the rods to stabilize the plasma stream. The power source was a Frankenstein's monster of transformers he'd salvaged from discarded microwaves and televisions, daisy-chained together. His workshop was anything but sterile. It was a chaotic mess of greasy tools, buzzing coils, and wires snaking across the concrete floor. But in this mess, on a cold January night in 1995, his simple machine did something that defied all logic. While testing the stability of the arc, he dropped a simple steel screw into the gap between the rods. For a split second, the screw was just gone. It didn't fall. It didn't fly off. It vanished from sight, only to reappear a moment later a few feet away on his workbench, as if it had blinked through an invisible wall. Stunned, Mike did what any curious mind in the 90s would do. He called the late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM. His voice, usually quiet, was buzzing with an energy that captivated listeners across the country. He told the host, Art Bell, everything: the screw, the laser-stabilized arc, and the strange ripple in space he believed he had created. For a moment, there was silence on the airwaves. The story was so bizarre, so unbelievable, that it hooked everyone. Soon after, letters began pouring in. Some were from scientists warning him to stop, telling him he was playing with forces he couldn't comprehend. Others urged him on, convinced he was on the verge of a breakthrough. The attention only fueled his obsession. What many overlooked was just how far he was willing to go. Needing more power, he did something reckless. He broke into a local power company's storage yard and hauled away 6 massive industrial-grade transformers, each weighing over 300 pounds. When he hooked them up to his garage rig, the power surge was so immense it caused a blackout across several blocks in his rural Missouri town. It didn't take long for the police to connect the outage to him, and he was sentenced to 60 days in county jail. But jail didn't stop him. While others counted the days, Mike filled scraps of paper with new diagrams, replaying the moment the screw vanished in his mind. When he got out, he was more determined than ever. He told his radio audience he was done with stolen parts, this time gathering his equipment from flea markets and yard sales. He even promised to film his next experiments as proof. The mystery of what he had stumbled upon had taken over his life, pushing him toward a second, far more powerful machine. He didn't know it yet, but he was building the very thing that would erase him. When the line went dead. In the final months of 1996, Mike Markham made his last call to Coast AM. The confident energy in his voice was gone. This time it trembled, heavy with a sense of dread that sent a chill through everyone listening. The man who had once excitedly described a disappearing screw now spoke in hushed, tense tones about strange glitches in his experiments. He described a field inside his new, much larger machine that seemed to have its own pulse. He warned that objects passing through the arc weren't just vanishing anymore, they were flashing in and out of existence, unstable and distorted. The most shocking fact he shared was about the living creatures he tested. He admitted to sending small animals through the field only for them to become disoriented and unwell, perishing within hours of exposure. You could hear the fear in his voice, the weight of a man who realized he had created something he could no longer control. Near the end of the call, he uttered a phrase that would echo for years to come. "I'm so close. I just need more power, a cleaner field." And then the line went dead. That call kicked off weeks of silence. The show's host, Art Bell, scheduled a follow-up interview for March of 1997, promoting it as the next chapter in a growing mystery. The night of the scheduled show, thousands of people tuned in waiting to hear from the Time Machine Man. But the studio's phone line for him remained silent. The producers tried calling him again and again, but every call went straight to a dead message box. Letters sent to his house went unopened. His few friends said they hadn't seen him in weeks. The once eager inventor had gone completely dark. Then came the fire. On a quiet Tuesday night, neighbors reported the smell of burning plastic and ozone, a scent they described as a weird electrical storm. By the time firefighters arrived, Mike's small house was engulfed in flames, with the garage burning hotter than anything they had ever seen. When they finally put out the blaze, the scene was one of total devastation. The garage was a blackened shell with dripping copper wires fused to the walls. But the thing that caught everyone's attention was a perfect circle, about 6 feet in diameter, burned deep into the concrete floor, almost like a shadow seared into the ground. The official report listed the cause as a massive electrical overload. But what was truly unsettling was what they didn't find. There was no sign of Mike Markham. No body, no remains, not even a fragment. It was as if he had been vaporized, leaving nothing behind but scorched earth. Amidst the twisted metal and ash, investigators found only 2 things: a handful of strangely bent tools and a single sheet of paper curled and blackened by the heat. On it, written in shaky ink, were 5 chilling words. "It's not about time travel." The man who wanted to bend time had vanished into thin air. His story was about to become a legend, the case that wouldn't go cold. By 1999, Mike Markham's story had jumped from the airwaves to the flickering screens of the early internet. Before social media, there were text-only Usenet groups and clunky message boards, digital campfires where late-night thinkers shared tales of the strange and unexplained. The story of the garage inventor who built a time machine and then disappeared in a mysterious fire was perfect fuel for this new frontier. Threads with titles like "Where is the Time Machine Man?" and "The Missouri Temporal Anomaly" exploded, with users posting hundreds of theories, each more elaborate than the last. You see, with no facts, people filled in the blanks themselves. 2 main theories took hold. The first was that he had succeeded. His final experiment had worked, tearing a hole in reality and throwing him into another time, leaving behind only a burnt-out garage as proof of his impossible journey. The second theory was darker. It suggested that he had returned but not to the right time, that his machine had malfunctioned, stranding him somewhere in the past, lost and alone. Both sides argued passionately, certain their version was the truth. The official missing persons case had gone cold, but online, Mike Markham was more alive than ever. Then an internet sleuth dug up a bizarre, forgotten case from the 1930s that threw gasoline on the fire. In 1930, the body of an unidentified man was found on a desolate stretch of beach in California. At the time, newspapers reported that the man seemed out of place. He was dressed in clothes that were oddly modern for the era, and even stranger, he was carrying a small rectangular device made of a strange metal covered in symbols that no one could identify. The object was logged as evidence and then, like the man himself, forgotten. For over 60 years, it was just a strange footnote in an old police file. But when this story hit the internet, it was connected to Markham almost immediately. Could this have been him? Thrown back 67 years by his machine only to perish on a lonely beach? His time machine in his pocket? The idea was electric. Grainy comparison photos circulated, trying to match the morgue photo from 1930 to the one known picture of Mike. The fact that the strange device was never photographed or released to the public wasn't seen as a dead end. It was seen as a cover-up. What many overlooked was the lack of hard evidence, but the story was just too good to let go. Just as the buzz started to fade in the early 2000s, a new twist pulled everyone back in. In 2006, a college professor in Oregon who ran a small blog about building Tesla coils received a strange anonymous email. The sender claimed to be Mike Markham. Attached to the email were several hand-drawn diagrams titled Vortex Stabilization Frame Gen 3. There was no message, just the schematics. The IP address was traced to a public library computer in Hawaii, but the trail went cold after that. Was it a hoax or was the ghost in the machine reaching out? The legend was now set in stone, but the truth was far stranger than any internet theory. Not of this earth. For over 25 years, the case of Mike Markham remained a mystery, a favorite story for conspiracy theorists and late-night radio listeners. The official investigation had stalled almost immediately after the fire in 1997. With no body and no leads, he was just another face in the National Missing Persons database. But what nobody knew was that the investigators did find something in the wreckage of his garage. Something so impossible, so world-altering that the evidence was immediately sealed and classified at a federal level. Hidden from the official report was the discovery of a single drop of blood. In the chaos of the fire, it had been flung onto a piece of metal where the intense heat had flash-cooked it, preserving the genetic material inside. In 1997, DNA testing was still in its early stages. They confirmed the blood was human, but it didn't match anyone in their system. For years, the sample, labeled Evidence Item 3B, sat in a freezer in a government lab, forgotten. The crazy thing is, technology always catches up. In 2023, a new cold case initiative using advanced genomic sequencing began retesting old evidence. When they got to Item 3B, they ran it through the system, expecting a routine result. What they got back sent shockwaves through the lab. The report was flagged with so many errors that they thought the machine was broken. They ran it again and again. The result was always the same. The DNA of Mike Markham was not entirely human. You see, human DNA, and in fact all DNA from Earth, is based on a specific set of 4 nucleobases: A, C, G, and T. It's the fundamental code of life on our planet. We share about 60% of our DNA with a banana. That's how universal this code is. But Markham's DNA was different. While most of it was recognizably human, it contained fragments of a genetic code that used base pairs and protein structures that have never been seen in any organism on Earth. It was, for all intents and purposes, alien. The discovery was a bombshell. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. This was a matter of national security and potentially global significance. The man who claimed to have built a time machine had left behind proof that he was something else. The theories that he had traveled through time were instantly dwarfed by a much more terrifying possibility. The story of Mike Markham is a chilling reminder that some doors are best left unopened. He reached for the stars and was forever changed. But it leaves us with a terrifying question. Was his transformation an accident or the first step in something else? If you enjoyed this mystery, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more strange stories from the unknown.